YouTube, where we fuse together science and math with film, video games, and television to come up with mind-blowing theories. We also run YouTube's largest regular live streaming channel. But more importantly, and more to what we're talking about today, we also consult for top YouTube channels as well as brands who are looking to make a splash in the digital video space, both on YouTube and on Facebook. And today we're going to be focusing on YouTube, but also digital video in general. And we're going to be talking about a lot of issues and a lot of pitfalls that our clients who we've consulted with fall into as they're looking to kind of make waves in this space and build sustainable businesses. So with that, Stephanie, you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually when we're talking at places like VidCon, we're getting really granular. We're talking about the specific analytics and data that we're using, and we are going to do some more of that tomorrow. But actually, for this presentation, we're kind of taking a step back, like Matthew mentioned, and talking about some of the companies that we consult in the space, as well as companies who are looking to build digital native presences online. You see a lot of familiar faces on the screen, companies that we all know and love and probably watch whether we like it or not if we're on a lot of social video platforms. And this first slide is sort of the bummer slide, which is essentially to say that we know and love a lot of these companies, but unfortunately in the last 6 months or 12 months, we've seen a lot of them have to actually shrink pretty considerably. Companies like BuzzFeed, who missed revenue projections in 2017 by 15%, or Vice, who missed their revenue projections by 20%. Vox, who just laid off several hundred employees, including members of their creative and production teams. So core teams for creating digital videos and building digital businesses through places like YouTube and Facebook and Snapchat and all these other places that people are really excited about right now. Even companies where we haven't seen, contraction or having to, let go of any employees or anything like that, like just big YouTube companies like Five Brothers Entertainment and Mythical, who produce like some of our favorite content online. They still have, 100 or 200 employees. And at this point, they're also, absolutely recognizing that they need to start entering into much bigger partnerships, that they need to start to, think about how they're going to continue to finance and grow beyond what they are now. So sustainability is becoming a big issue with a lot of these companies as they've sort of scaled out over time. But it doesn't just apply to really big organizations that have hundreds or thousands of people. It can apply to a team of 5 as well. Or a team of 1. Like how do you sustain yourself as an online creator? So that's really what the focus is of everything we're going to be talking about today. We have sort of this transition going on right now to kind of wrap up the talk about sort of what's been going on in the industry before we talk about what we do and what we think about when we think about sustainability. You have this sort of old model, which honestly looks a bit like a traditional TV model in a lot of ways, where you try out a ton of different formats and you kind of just see what sticks. So BuzzFeed is famous for using this model, right? Where they start out with really low budget productions made by independent third-party producers who come in and they're like, hey, I've got this great idea for a format, I'm gonna try it out. BuzzFeed's like, great, you've got $300 per episode, make it work. And if it does well, BuzzFeed's like, awesome, great, we're gonna bring you in-house, we're going to obtain your IP, and then we're gonna start building out, staffing out around it, and they ramp up very quickly after that. But the problem with this model is that when you have a BuzzFeed or a Vox or a Vice doing, going through this kind of process, they're measuring success based on video performance alone. And while views are awesome, retention is great, engagements are fantastic, they often don't actually translate to money. And money actually pays people's salaries. So the problem is that some of our favorite content online actually doesn't end up being sustainable, even though it's super popular. A lot of cases because it's been put on platforms that just have really underdeveloped monetization, or monetization that's been maybe promised for years but actually hasn't materialized in a way that make these companies able to actually function with the resources that they have and the staff that they have to build out around these kinds of formats. So they rely on maybe a couple big formats, but actually the vast majority aren't profitable at all. And their fixed costs in the meanwhile are rising really fast, but sustainability is not really something that that's even being used as a goal. And we think about like digital companies, movers and shakers, and we're like, oh man, they're so innovative. They've got all this really cutting edge, like amazing content, and no one goes and looks at a company and they're like, wow, look at the sustainability on that organization. Isn't that awesome? But we should talk about that kind of thing because it's becoming more and more important.
Yeah, and like Stephanie said, it's funny coming off of the Tubular Labs presentation, the last session, which was,
We use Tubular and everything.
Yeah, no, we're big proponents of Tubular. That they have tremendously robust analytics, and data nerds like us really love their product. But it's one of those things where he's like, oh, a lot of these sexy growing companies who are like getting huge on Facebook have one analyst for every 20 hires. But like Stephanie said, now all of a sudden you have a ton of overhead from all these full-time employees, and you're building a business on Facebook where there is still years later no monetization. Like your hope for monetization on Facebook is, did you get a deal with Facebook Watch? And so that's why
they're very limited beta monetization programs. And
right,
like
exactly. So it's one of those things where yes, big views are really great to talk about, and look at us, we have 500 million views, 1 billion views. Look at how Facebook is taking off. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a sustainable business model to show for it, you better hope that you're getting bought out quickly, is basically the long and short.
Yeah. And one thing that is also obviously harped on in like every presentation that you're in at these kinds of events like VidCon and so forth is that all these platforms are changing. I mean, in the last 6 months, there have been pretty significant algorithm changes in some cases on Facebook, on YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat, or some major layout change in the last 6 months. So these platforms have one thing that you can rely on, and that's that they're going to change, which makes building a sustainable business even harder. And so the question that we're looking to answer today is what do we think about and what do we talk to our clients about when it comes to actually buffering against the inevitability that these platforms are going to shift, that these platforms are not always going to be aligned with your business priorities, and what do you do about that? It is possible. It is, it is something that there are ways to make this work. This is still an extremely exciting place to be, and what we want to talk about is the smart way to make sure that you're around for as long as possible. So we'll talk about a few elements of what it means to actually be sustainable, and we think about this kind of thing a lot. We talked to a lot of people about it. Everything from the very earliest stages of what do you actually want to do, setting goals, making sure that you actually have KPIs and that they're measurable for whatever kind of content you're producing on whatever platform you're producing it for, all the way through making sure that your content is aligned with the platform it's with. It seems kind of intuitive, but we still have these conversations with 90% of our consulting